Good afternoon. So nice to have you all here. Thanks for coming. My name's Megan McClelland, and I'm the director of the Hallie Ford Center for Healthy Children and Families here at OSU. I'm also a professor in human development and family sciences. So it's really lovely to have you. We had a different speaker planned, and unfortunately, she got the flu. And we are a very nimble and adaptable leadership team here in our center. And so it just so happens that we have a very well-respected colleague and researcher who also is just incredible at the translation of research into practice. So Dr. Shauna Tominey is here and jumped right in with less than 24 hours notice and is going to give us a really fantastic talk today. So Dr. Tominey is an associate professor here at OSU. She got her PhD here also in human development and family sciences. She's the state coordinator for the Oregon Parenting Education Collaborative and has been involved with that for 10 years, almost 10 years. Shauna and I worked together on many things for a long, long time. And she is the co-developer of the red light, purple light school readiness work that we do together. We've had a number of projects and grants to help improve children's readiness for school and their early foundational skills they need to be successful. And then lots of other opportunities. She collaborates with lots of us. She's a wonderful colleague. She's a former early childhood teacher and parenting educator. She really, really is incredibly good at blending the practical experience with the up-to-date research and innovation. So this is what the heart of what we do here at the Hallie Ford Center is really figure out how to take innovation and the cutting-edge research and translate it into ways that will really benefit the people of Oregon and beyond, children, families, and communities. She writes books. She does all things, honestly. She's the author. We have a book. Great. I forgot about that. We also have a book. But we have a book called Stop, Think, Act, which is a guide for teachers. And then she's also the author of Creating Compassionate Kids, Essential Conversations to Have with Young Children. She's a contributor to PBS Kids for parents, and she's just a wonderful colleague to have. So I am going to turn this over to her, but thank you for doing this, and I'm excited for your talk.
Okay, let me get organized. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for joining us for the Campbell Lecture. And today, on short notice, but nimble and ready with some of the amazing work that happens out of the Hallie Ford Center here in the College of Health at OSU. When the chance came up to, somebody talk about translating research or how research grows over time from the seeds of an idea to practical tools for children and families, it really was an honor to have a chance to come and share with you today. So I'll be speaking on, these are words actually from a family, knowing I'm not alone. Strengthening families and building caring communities through the Oregon Parenting Education Collaborative. As Megan shared, I'm Shauna Tominey. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an associate professor here, as well as a graduate of the program who, Megan didn't mention this, but she was also my doctoral advisor. So we do have a long history. We won't count the years at this point in time. Because they're growing. So before I start, I do also want to just give thanks and gratitude. I'm standing up here today to share about an initiative, as I share the Oregon Parenting Education Collaborative, and want to acknowledge that this work is grounded in the work of so many individuals, community partners. We have team members here who I've named both present and past team members, several of whom I see in the room today, Lindsay, Michaela, Asia in the back, and OPEC Foundation partners. You'll be able to hear a little bit about their role in really launching this initiative and how important it was to have foundation partners and donors and being able to do things that were innovative and different and unique nationwide here in Oregon. We'll also talk a little bit about our state partners, the donors and sponsors who have played a role in this, and the tremendous number of hubs, community partners, consultants, collaborators, speakers, students, staff, faculty. We've had so many collaborators on this. So I really have the honor of sharing this with you today, but this really represents the work of so many people, as well as the parenting education professionals who we serve and the families with they interns. Usually, oftentimes a gratitude slide is at the end, and I didn't want that to be short. So I do also want to acknowledge Dr. Miriam Abdullah, who is going to come and speak today. And when Megan, Dr. McClelland, who directs the Hallie Ford Center, had asked for ideas, who should we bring out for this lecture? Miriam was someone who really stood out for that. And the reason why is because she's the parenting program director at the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley. And if you have not seen a resource come out from the Greater Good Science Center, that's becoming less and less common. They are experts at taking research on happiness, on well-being, on parenting and family relationships, on education, and turning them into blog posts, videos. They have a relatively new family well-being for the Greater Good science-based workbook for people working with families that are free and available widely. They are disseminating research in ways that is making a difference in communities across the country. I thought, who better to learn from than somebody directly doing this work and thinking about how do we take the science that we're learning in a university and make sure that it is relevant and meaningful for somebody who's having a parenting moment where they're in the middle of a tantrum and thinking, am I totally alone in this? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? What should I do in this? So I'm sorry that you won't have a chance to learn from her today, but I highly recommend that you look up her work and take a look at these resources. They're doing some amazing things, and I look forward to us thinking about how we can continue to do work in this direction too. I learned from last time. So this is a photo. Today we're talking about parenting. And this was a photo in my very first few days of becoming a parent. My daughter is here, tucked in with me. And I remember this incredible weight of being a parent, both the joy that comes with that. And I remember when she was born, one of the very first things I thought when I looked at her face, I kind of been expecting, after looking at my own baby pictures, looking at my husband's baby pictures, that I'd see some version of us or one of us in her. And I remember when she was born, looking into her face and thinking, you're your own person. You're not either one of us. And all that comes with that thought and that. Now, there's a question that I often ask when I'm speaking. And I've asked this question in this room before, but it's been a few years. I thought it was a good time to ask it again. If you had to choose just one word to describe the society that you want for the children in your life, the families in your life, and even just for yourself, what would that be? What would you choose? Supportive. Supportive. Kind. Kind.
Yeah.
Fair.
Cooperative.
Cooperative. Forgiving. Forgiving. Forgiving and loving. Welcoming. Welcoming. Empathetic. Empathetic. Safe. Peaceful. These are the same words whenever I ask this question to a group, whether they are students, educators, business leaders, community members, parents, and family members. Everybody chooses the same words. These words that reflect our, well, actually it's World Mental Health Day, that reflect our well-being, the way that we take care of ourselves, the way we take care of one another, the way that we interact with each other with care in a community. And those are the words that I want too when I think about bringing my own child into this world and the world that I hope she will see reflected around her. And yet, we don't always see this world reflected back, those words that you chose reflected back in the same way that we would hope. We find those words, we are striving for them in the work that happens here at the Hallie Ford Center and the College of Health more broadly. So much of our work is actually geared toward creating a world that is healthy through fairness and peace and love and support in each of these ways. I'm just going to point out that nobody said prosperous.
Right.
However, in our college's strategic plan, in thinking about prosperity widely shared, we could also frame some of those words into that feeling of prosperity. But if anybody brings up that word, then you win the day. But I actually have not heard anyone choose that word. When I think about what does it take for a parent or a caregiver, and when I say parent, I mean parents broadly, in the sense of biological parents, adoptive parents, foster parents, other family members, non-family members who are caregivers or primary caregivers of children in their lives. What does it take for us to help create and shape that world and make sure that the children in our lives have those skills to be a part of that community we want to be a part of, as well as that the community around them reflects that back to them? And there's so much that goes into that. When I think about, on the next slide that I'll share in just a moment, there are these nearly timeless challenges that parents experience in terms of needing to understand child development. What's happening? Is this normal? Is this typical? Is this something that my child is doing that I just don't understand, but it's okay? In navigating that transition to parenthood, in navigating the ups and downs of the emotions that their children have, as well as their own emotions along the way. And then there are also timely things that happen and change based on identity, culture, and context. When I think of my own mom and her parenting role, here's my mom with me. Her experience had some of those same similarities to mine. She was still navigating how to raise a child, how to manage her emotions, how to manage mine, how her own parenting came into our relationship for the challenges that that brought, as well as the strengths that that offered. And she also came from a very different context. She was an immigrant in her 20s from Taiwan. She was bilingual. English was not one of those languages. And she had to not only learn a new language, step into a new culture, navigate totally new systems and experiences, all while parenting a child with one culture that she carried herself, while her child also stood between multiple cultures. That's a lot for parents to carry. And so there are these aspects of parenting that can feel timeless, that most parents experience in some way, from navigating that transition to parenthood, that knowledge of child development, and even your own child. When you look down and say, oh, you're not just a version of me. Or maybe you do share some parts of me, or maybe you share the parts that really push my own buttons, that make it challenging to navigate that in the way that I most want to. Financial and economic strain, which rises and falls with families depending on the context, the resources available, the policies, institutions around them, role strain, stress and well-being, isolation and loneliness, which has been on the rise, really peaked during the pandemic in particular. And this isn't it was a newer term a few years ago. It's not so new anymore. There's a growing body of research on technofearance, both the positive benefits of technology. I mean, we have all of the essentially written and digitized information in the world right here in our pockets. This is pretty phenomenal. I can connect with someone around the world in seconds. And the downsides of that are coming out in research are even something as simple as having an interaction with your child and being interrupted for a few moments by a phone call. The work of, I know actually we had Roberta Golenkoff here with her colleagues, Reed and Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, conducted a study where they looked at parents who were teaching children 2 new vocabulary words. And in one group, parents received a phone call in the middle, and so they received a little distraction and then came back to that interaction. And in the other, there was no distraction. Children in the group with the distraction, even though they heard the same 2 words, even though they had the same interactions, they just had a little distraction in the middle, didn't learn the words. The children in the other group did. And so this technoference is coming out in different ways, coming out in those little moments of connections. It's coming out in studies that are showing that children know how much time their parents are spending on their phones or on other devices, and can talk openly about how that's impacting their relationship with their parents, their bond, and vice versa. We see parents who are really struggling with how to help their children learn to be a part of the society we have now and the technological advances that we have, while also struggling with setting reasonable limits and rules and helping their children navigate technology safely, effectively, and with the skills they'll need to thrive with that technology later on. And then, of course, identity, cultural, and contextual needs. Megan mentioned that I'd been an early child teacher as well as a parenting educator, and I've worked in a number of states around the country where I've worked with military families who faced many of the same needs and some of their own unique needs related to frequent moves, deployment, separation. I was myself in a military family at that time. Identity, culture, and context, think of immigrant and refugee families, the experiences they may have navigating new environments, and that may be impacted as well depending on the resources they have, the social and cultural capital they have, whether or not they've experienced significant trauma, or families who have experienced trauma. There are so many different iterations of what it means to be a family, who's in a family, what those family experiences are, that it can feel almost impossible as a parent or a family member to feel like you know what to do. So, I didn't point out this. Nearly 70% of parents, this came out from our previous Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy. Nearly 70% of parents in the work that they conducted say parenting is now more difficult than it was 20 years ago. And technology and social media are cited as the top two challenges associated with that, because not only are there persistent parenting challenges, but there are new and changing challenges that have been layered on top of that. In addition, 65% of parents and guardians and 77% of single parents in particular reported experiencing loneliness. And this isn't just parents. 55% of people who are not parents also experience loneliness. We have a society that is experiencing significant loneliness, regardless of whether or not they identify as parents. 33% of parents reported high levels of stress in the past month relative to 20% of other adults. And in a complementary study, 48% of those said day-to-day stress related to parenting was overwhelming and contributing to burnout. In Oregon, if we put all this together and just think about the context of Oregon families, some of these numbers came from brand new data from Our Children Oregon just released the kid count data for this last year, that you can take a look here. I won't read all the numbers, but you can get a glimpse at the number of children under 18, under 5, those in Oregon who are youth of immigrant parents, those who are youth with disabilities, LGBTQIA+ youth, the number of children, this was in 2023, who spent at least one day in foster care. And then we can also see that there are a range of needs for children as well. Food insecurity, children in poverty. This really varies across counties. Families facing rental cost burdens, and families with childcare access. This was the one number that positively increased over the last few years. But when we think of this, every child, every family, it doesn't necessarily just fit one box. There are many who actually carry multiple identities. So you may have children who not only are experiencing food insecurity, but are helping their parents navigate new systems as immigrants or children of immigrants who may not have access to childcare. So these all compound to create situations for families where they can either thrive or really struggle in that search for thriving. And it's no wonder, putting all this together, that Dr. Murthy said just last year, we need a culture shift in how we value parenting. And he called parental stress as a public health challenge, noting that parents face silent struggles as they try to care for their children. So we actually put this out as a public health advisory, which was pretty phenomenal to see that this came out and affirmed some of the work that has been happening here really over the last, not just 15, but 20 years when you go back even beyond that. And that's what I'm here to tell you about today, is some work happening here that really has been grown and built on this history of research showing that parenting is challenging. It is challenging for everybody, but that there's promise in bringing families together in parenting groups through parenting education classes and programs to build community, to celebrate parenting successes together, to normalize the challenges so that we don't feel so alone on that journey, and to help parents build tools, either from evidence-based and research-informed tools and strategies, as well as just from hearing from other families. What did you try? What worked for you? Let me try that at home too. I tried this 3 times, it didn't work, I'm ready for something else. So coming together around. Harkening back to our prosperity widely shared, thinking about big discoveries but drive big solutions. This was a way of going big, creating a statewide home for families. So back in 2010, I'm going to show you a timeline in a few minutes that actually carries this work back to 2003. But back in 2010 was when OPEC officially launched. In partnership with faculty and staff at Oregon State University, Michaela Seknin is one of the original OPEC team members, along with Denise Renningham. 4 foundations, Oregon's 4 largest philanthropic foundations, the Oregon Community Foundation, Ford Family Foundation, Meyer Memorial Trust, and the Collins Foundation, were funding parenting education programs. And so they were in different communities funding different programs here and there, and seeing a lot of value and a lot of need for that, but also seeing that funding one program here might help 10 or 12 families. And then they'd come back the next year to fund the same program again, and wondering if pooling resources, coming together with an evaluation and technical assistance partner, could they do something bigger? Could they go big and do something that actually became lasting and sustainable? And that was the hope behind OPAC, was to create a statewide network, a statewide home for families. There were homes of the state for K-12 education, for other types of services, but not for parenting education and family support in this way of convening families, building community. There is some level, and was, of parenting education, often through the Department of Human Services, for families associated with child welfare or who really needed intervention and support, but not to bring the full community together and really build that society that we'd all want for our children holistically and for their parents. So the idea was to build a statewide network of hubs, and that hubs would help support in their local communities, as community organizations, parenting education, with support from folks at the Hallie Ford Center and here at OSU, serving as the hub for that. The mission and vision of OPAC are to support the delivery of high-quality parenting education programs that are evidence-based and culturally responsive. And the vision is that all Oregon parents, and we tag in one honorary county in Siskiyou, California, because the Ford Family Foundation has a deep connection there, will have access to high-quality parenting education programs that support them in their critical roles as their children's first and most important teachers. All Oregon communities and Siskiyou will be served by a network of strong parenting programs and a regional hub. And Oregon will become a national leader in professionalizing and normalizing parenting education. So the idea that any family, in bringing a child into their life or having a child in their life or having children in their life, would have a place to go, to connect with other families, to find resources on whatever stage they were in child development, where they could go and not feel so alone on that journey. And that this could be normalized. So it's not something for those parents. It's not something for parents who are only at a certain point in their life where they absolutely need intervention or where they're mandated to that intervention. But instead, from the start, you wouldn't have to be so alone. And that this could be a community norm. The idea that grew from that as well was that there would be evaluation of these programs and technical assistance, which is a very vague term. You'll see what that's turned into. Related to strategic planning support and other, as well as professional development. This was a piece that was smaller in the beginning in OPEC of realizing how important professional development was, and that's something that's grown pretty significantly as well. And then layering in evaluation and research, as well as state-level partnerships. So the very small and mighty team at that time at OSU took on a lot. They were grant funded to do quite a lot of work in setting up the state system. And it was because of some of their very, very thoughtful work around setting up a clear mission and vision, setting up a system for evaluation and reporting that is still used today quite robustly and led by Michaela, that what you're about to see happen was able to happen. So today, there are now 16 parenting hubs serving the state of Oregon and Siskiyou County, California. Multnomah County is the one county without a hub. However, at this time, there are community grants that are serving community partners. The backbone organizations for hubs include a community college. Lynn Benton Community College is the local hub for Lynn Benton and Lincoln. County agencies, education service districts, Head Starts, standalone nonprofits. There are also coordinators sitting at CCOs, healthcare organizations, connected with those hubs. So over time, this is not where things started back in 2010. The network started with just a few hubs, and over time, hubs were added as communities were ready to add hubs to their region. And hubs were tasked with being that infrastructure, being that go-to place, getting a little bit of funding at that time to have a coordinator who could look for grants that would help support parenting education in the region, that would help be that go-to place to let families know who were the partners in the region offering supports. Sometimes they're the one giving those supports. Sometimes they're helping bringing funds to other partners, but being the conveners so that they could bring partners together and learn what are the available resources. How do we serve families as well as possible? So we all know how hard it is to have time to do things. And if you have someone with that dedicated time to actually bring people together, it makes collaboration easier. And then actually to deliver parenting education programming through direct service, through community grants or mini grants, and ensuring fidelity, best practices, and evaluation was happening along the way. So I have a quick slide just showing you the logos from the parenting hubs across the state right now. And we're happy to share with you the website to this so that you could check them out if you're interested, as well as some of the Multnomah partners who were funded this year through OPEC to deliver services in their communities. So there's a wide range of partners who are serving families using a wide range of methods. And a few statistics to share. These are our numbers from 2010 through 2024. We'll have updated numbers usually in December, January in adding the next year. But you can see here with the data that's being collected, OPEC to date has served over 1 million families. And this has come in a combination of parenting education series, which are curricula that are longer term. So they might be 6 weeks, they might be 10 or 12 or 14 weeks even. And oftentimes there are partners where that might be a requirement. If families are engaged with child welfare, they may have a requirement that they are looking for a series to go through to help them on their parenting journey. Other families are looking for that because they want that long-term connection. Some families are looking more for workshops, one-off kinds of things, depending on the topic that they're looking at. And then there's a whole range of family support activities that hubs are offering, we have lots of examples we could share another time. I won't have time to give all those examples today. But hubs are reaching families in many different ways and really looking at how do we meet their needs now, where they are. In addition, OPAC and OPAC hubs have been able to train facilitators in parenting education curricula. They're a pretty significant number since OPEC was founded. And these funds leverage are funds that OPEC hubs were able to bring in to their hubs, either in cash or in kind, because they had that seed funding from OPEC. So having foundation partners who, early on in OPEC, the foundation investment was about $1.2 million a year for the entire network. That's a lot of money, and it doesn't go very far for a lot of organizations. So you can imagine just a little bit at each organization and a little bit coming here to fund the staff that were supporting OPEC as well. But what the hubs were able to do with that in terms of bringing partners together and saying, we have a little bit, what do you have? How can we serve and support families better? Pretty phenomenal. Some of the data that we collect, and I'm just going to go through really quickly, just so you can see it on the screen, is related to who's being served, who's participating in different types of programs, whether by demographic data, whether by resources. This is families who we know access one or more resources for low-income families. So 70% of families are identifying in our system and metrics as being of low income. That's for series, 60%, excuse me, for workshops. The ages of children and families, these are data just from this last year. Early on in OPEC, as I'll talk about in a minute, programs were really focused on 0 to 6. And with expanded state partnership, programs have expanded to include families with teens as well. So we've been able to see trends in who's participating, who has access, changing over time as well. And we have further data being able to look at who's coming in terms of identity, in terms of who are we serving in the community by race, ethnicity, gender, and other variables. So bringing that back to fueling a thriving world, which again comes from prosperity widely shared, and our goals here as a college and a university, in their words, what does having access to parenting education mean to the families who participate? What we've seen in quantitative data is that participating families report significant increases pre-post in understanding of their goals and values as a parent, child development knowledge, knowing what's normal or typical, showing children love and affection more frequently, listening to understand their child's feelings, setting reasonable limits and rules, having strategies for positive discipline, dealing with day-to-day parenting stresses, and talking with other parents to share experiences, to manage that stress, those feelings of isolation, that loneliness. And a quote from a family here, allowing more time for connecting with them more and allowing more space, delight in them. And for families who come through OPEC programs, 97% report they would recommend the class series stops. To share a few more quotes from families. I was honestly lost before. Parenting was stressful, and now I have a new mindset and optimism. I'm calmer and don't raise my voice as often, still a work in progress, and I've learned better ways to have my children do the things that need to be done on a daily basis without as much of a power struggle. I'm less anxious. I talk to my partner more around how we can be intentional around our parenting. I'm more aware of myself as a parent and my children's needs. I have new goals and a different perspective. I have a new set of tools to I'm building knowledge of child development. I'm going to be more patient with the kids and myself. I don't let my toddler's mood determine the rest of our day. I'm better equipped to handle my daughter more effectively and understand what she is really needed by her. We also see evidence through some of the stories that families share around healing intergenerational cycles or changing parenting behaviors that they may have experienced themselves. I'm still a work in progress and changing behaviors I learned growing up, but my kids get a better parent. And finally, coming back to that theme of community, building community between families. I am more confident as a new parent having been able to share in community. I also feel more supported. I'm not as alone in this journey. I feel like I have a better understanding of how to be a better parent, and then I'm not alone in what I go through. That phrase comes up again and again. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. A final quote I'll share with you is this. One thing that is really important about the classes is the relationships that we are developing as a community. We talk and share our struggles, and in this way, the parenting program continues into our lives. It didn't end when the classes ended. And it was words like these that really led to inspiration for foundation partners to come together and look at how do we keep this going? How do we keep support for families as an ongoing piece? So how do we build a responsive system? All right, a couple of lessons learned to share. And as I was thinking about these lessons learned, I'd really like to encourage you to think about what are lessons learned that may inform your own work, whether it's research, whether it's teaching or other. This is a pretty unique system. And as you'll see, we have a pretty unique set of partners and collaborators and funding streams coming into this, which takes a lot to replicate. But are there pieces of that that could really inform your own work or potential partnership? One is valuing relationships as absolutely foundational. This is absolutely critical. Having relationships, having connections with people. And that's at every single level. So much of this work is around helping families find connection, helping them find community. But that carries all the way on up through parenting educators who also need community and want support and not to be alone in their work, which is endless. Also to our foundation partners and donors who have been involved in OPEC and state partners. They've been so much more than just funders. They've come along with us to hear the stories of families, to really shape this system, as you'll see on the next slide, and to create something that was meaningful and lasting and made a difference in the communities they live in and care about. So that long-standing initiative, as you'll see on this next slide, this takes time. Doing something that grows from a seed of an idea, this thought that we need spaces for families to build community. Let's figure out how to do that, to turn that from the seeds of an idea, from the seeds of research, to a sustainable state system. Took significant time and dedication. It wasn't a one-off grant. It wasn't a one-time investment. It was long-term investment in relationship as well as funding, providing care for that workforce. And you'll see where OPEC is now in terms of securing diversified funding. And all of this can sometimes be challenging in an academic setting. Right here at the Hallie Ford Center and the College of Health at OSU, there are different pressures in academia that can make really intentional, long-term, slow work challenging. Thinking about urgency, thinking about capacity, thinking about lack of funding. How do we do good work, really deep, meaningful community work, if sometimes what we're required to do actually stands at odds at that a little bit? How do we navigate that? You don't have to be able to see the details of this, but I just want to show that the first OCF launched initiative on parenting education was back in 2003. So the seeds of this idea that launched in 2010 started long before that and came from these relationships, came from, I'm sure, Michaela, I know you did this too, driving around the state together and going and visiting different community partners and visiting parents. A few years ago, I was the one on our team going and doing 17 site visits a year and driving to every community, hearing from their families and partners. Our team has expanded now to be able to have others be a part of that too. But literally being in the car and going and meeting people where they were in their communities, in their spaces, and hearing their stories to carry that forward. So OPEC launched in 2010. We are 15 years beyond that now. So the tremendous work it's taken, not only to get the initiative launched, but to see where it's grown in the following slides, it's taken a lot of time. And in academia, so often the research grants that fund this work, which is all grant funded, often needs to come from state or federal sources to be the size they need to be lasting and to be large, which takes years and is very hard to maintain over time. So often researchers and academics are applying for a grant, hoping that they can apply for another grant that lets them continue the work. Usually there's gaps in the work then before you can do the next piece of work. But having a partnership with Oregon's foundations, as well as some key donors who came along with us, really helped hold OPEC stable while the initiative was building these relationships to then be able to bring in, show proof of concept that this could work, that this could be something bigger and sustaining. And then state partners joined. So some of the key things that happened were in 2014, OPEC held, after OPEC launched in 2010, the first Oregon Parenting Educators Conference, which was a recognition from hubs who said, we have all these parenting educators, turnover is high, they need support, they need professional development. It's too expensive for us to be able to do that, to coordinate it. Can you help with that? And a very gracious, generous donor, Cheryl Lutz, at that time, donated funds to help seed conference and to help pay for a part-time professional development coordinator for OPEC. And that seed of an idea then launched into a statewide system of professional development, which you'll see OPEC has now. It was years later, in 2019, when OPEC gained the first state partner. So when OPEC grew statewide and had shown proof of concept for 9 years, the Oregon Department of Human Services stepped forward and said, you're doing the work that we'd like to do, but we don't want to build our own system, so we'd like to invest in OPEC and expand what you do. So we see that most programs are focused on families with young children. We'd like to invest in programs for families with teens and older children. In 2020, Oregon's Department of Early Learning and Care came on as another partner to expand access to OPEC programs for families with young children. And just as of a few months ago, Oregon Health Authority joined us using the Department of Early Learning and Care funds as a state match to draw down federal funds. So OPEC has significantly grown and expanded. And, as I've shared, so has the work of the team here at the Hallie Ford Center on the OPEC team. These are some images from our annual OPEC conference that's hosted here in the spring, which again launched from a seed of an idea. It's a much smaller conference that has grown to serve 400 to 500 professionals every year who gather, come, and participate. You can see some of the words of conference participants. And again, that importance of community and connection. Some other offerings, as we have really thought about what do professionals need for OPEC. It was actually during the pandemic when everything shut down all of a sudden overnight. I remember being on a site visit, driving back from Siskiyou County, California. I was with Robin Hill Dunbar from the Ford Family Foundation when we were all sent home on March, it was the 12th or 13th of 2020, and came back, and all of a sudden, this entire system that had been built on connecting with people in person was looking around and saying, what do we do? And we had to learn to get online fast. And our team was nimble and very quickly said, well, let's learn Zoom and let's teach everybody else Zoom. So we started to do that. And a product of that has been expanding professional development through OPEC training academies, connect and learn learning opportunities that we have capped for professional staff. This was a tremendous need that we saw OPEC hubs having, and it was a need that we jumped in to fill and seeing they had that need. Fortunately, in bringing on state partners, they also saw, okay, what you're doing is really responsive. Because of the foundation investment, there was so much flexibility in our ability to actually be able to meet needs responsively. And so if a community said, this is really what we need, we'd work closely with our foundation partners and say, okay, the biggest challenge this year is workforce training. Hubs need that. What can we do? And that's where the investment would go. So we were able to be really nimble and quick and have been able to stand up a system now with an OPEC training academy, monthly trainings, learning communities, and others that are freely open to professionals. So again, from that seed of an idea of starting a professional development system, starting a conference, having to get online on account of the pandemic, but then realizing there was value there to reaching professionals all around the state, we launched a professional development system. And early on, there were dozens of people in that system. After about a year, it grew to about 200. I think about 2 years ago, we hit about 1,200 people in the system. And I just looked, and it's over 2,000 people now registered in the system using OPEC professional development resources, which have included over 100 hosted trainings now, including curriculum trainings, facilitation trainings, other kinds of workshops, learning communities. We have affinity spaces as well for LGBTQ plus professionals who are serving families, learning communities in English as well as in Spanish, and many trainings that are also translated and interpreted into Spanish. Okay, I'm looking at timing. Oh, there's so many things going on. I was trying to decide what to share. I may have to jump, but happy to share these out. Our team has also grown in ways that they can create responsive resources that families are looking for or that parenting educators are looking for. By and large, we have become the hub for the hubs. So they're serving families. We're helping them meet their needs, the needs of those professionals. And what started early on as with our much smaller team at that time, resources for families, blog posts, and newsletters that hubs could then share out for their communities to lift off some of their capacity load, turned into a monthly parenting educators post, parent and family leadership guidebooks. We have a new-ish podcast, OPEC en Español, our brand new Affirming Actions Toolkit, an ongoing foundations of facilitation resources and trainings. When I'm teaching, I have that on to remind us that we take a break at that time. So we are not taking a break in this moment. But resources that we've been able to develop in response to community need. And some of the success of that has come because we received diversified, flexible funding. It's pretty rare when you have a federal grant that when you go out in a community and say, oh, we've got this idea, and they say, no, that's not what we need. We need to do something else that you can just change and do that. And that, quite honestly, was what happened when I started this position. So when I came on in 2016 and was hired into a professor of practice position at that time, a big piece of excitement that was shared with me by leadership in the college was, oh, this is great. We're going to shift the nature of this position so it can be focused on research. Go in and start the parenting research. And so I came in and tried to be a good listener and tried to be humble. And you know what hubs and community partners said back? They said, well, that's great. Research is good. We need that. But we need funding. We don't know if we'll exist next year. We'll be your research partner, but not now. We need to know that we'll even exist next year. And so that became the focus of what we had to do to build them. And that can be hard because that can be at odds with what you need to do academically. So I'm going to show you what happened as OPEC grew, and we'll come back. So you know about OPEC's Foundation Initial Partners. And I mentioned as OPEC grew, we had 3 state partners coming to the mix as well. And so what that did for OPEC was we went from having foundation partners who were really funding the team here at OSU, as well as the OPEC hubs. And over time, that has grown so that we now have 3 state partners as well. So OPEC funding has diversified from those foundation partners to now state partners. Now, one of the challenges with state partners, who we are very, very thankful for and grateful for, is that there are very strict requirements. And sometimes those requirements and timelines don't meet the needs of families and professionals in the field. That is one of the biggest challenges that we can have working with state partners. What's beneficial about this is that all the funders are contributing to the hub infrastructure, state system of professional development, which is what's let us grow so many of these programs for professionals, as well as some of the responsive, emergent care that we offer back to hubs as they need it. And then each has different priorities. So DELC funds programs just for families 0 to 6. DHS funds programs just for families 7 to 18. OHA funds families with children of any age, but they have to be Medicaid eligible. So we have to balance all of this. And as you might imagine, every single one of these funders has a different reporting requirement. Every single one of these funders has different needs that then get layered on this system. And one of the things that we've been able to do here is really to think about how do we leverage I'm going to jump here. How do we leverage our knowledge and use it where it's most needed? How do we share our social capital and share that back with community partners in a way that's most helpful to them? One of those ways is that they just keep reporting in that same system, and we pull out reports for them, that we take care of that for them, take that up, that we take care of navigating those relationships and contracts at the state level, and then they're navigating one with us that looks the same, that has the same reporting requirements. So we've really tried to think about what is it that we do at an academic institution that allows us to use our power and knowledge and share it with community partners, really seeing them as the leaders, really seeing them as the ones who know families best and know what they need best, and then bring our voices to these spaces where one of the things that I found here in this position is that my voice is often listened to more than a hub leader's voice. If I'm talking to legislative bodies, if I'm talking to funders. And so the importance of having these deep relationships where we really can be responsive, where we really can learn, where we really can carry those needs forward for them, finding that we are the ones in those spaces is so critical. So we've really looked at how do we do that? How do we use the skills, the strategies, the knowledge, the research that we have here, turn it into something practical? It has to come over time with these deep relationships. So in thinking about just some lessons learned, in terms of OPEC, for us, we've had this very long-standing series of relationships that have grown over time. And they have grown from being able to take the time to build relationships, to learn to be responsive in the moment. Having those, as I mentioned, diversified funding streams has made a huge difference to be able to expand. There are also challenges that come with that. Going from the seeds of an idea to a state system came with a lot of paperwork. And I'm very, very grateful for OSU's support coming through OSRA, through the SUP Awards office, through pre and post award support, because we couldn't do this without them. We're trying and doing things that haven't happened before in this way at OSU. And everyone has said, that's okay. We'll figure it out. Just go for it. We'll figure it out. But I do want to, for you in these last few moments that we have, just bring this back to seeing a little bit about our state system. I wish that we could dive in more, that we had more time. Time goes by so quickly. But to bring this back to you and thinking about your work. So OPEC as a state system grew from the seeds of an idea and from the seeds of research that showed bringing families together in community with support could change and shape lives, reduce loneliness, could help enhance child development knowledge, could help improve and strengthen their bonds with their families. And that idea has grown over many years with the support of many individuals and organizations to a state level system. A thought I'd love to ask you, or give you a moment to think about, is what's something you've learned from research? Even something as simple as the thought of bringing families together might help them heal. From research, teaching, or service, that could improve the health of communities. Anybody for a quick? Very nice.
I've attended one of your talks about play, and I was able to mingle with people from different like levels of child education or parent education levels, and it made me realize like how burnt out they may be and how like wow, we really need to support them. And by supporting them, they will be able to have more capacity to support children, and it's like a domino effect, and really realizing that like it really starts with it starts with like parent educators.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Tammy, did you have one to add?
I think meeting folks where they're at. I think about my mom, and she was 15 when she had me, so she had no idea what supports were there. And this was in the 70s, so maybe there weren't very many, but I worked for Sanbed for a while, and I learned about this RX Steady RX program.
Yep.
And so they were not just, at the health clinic, making sure that folks had access, but they would have a little farmer's market there for them where they could come and, just leave with the vegetables, So it was just meeting folks where they're at, So because if you're just isolated like you are in your community and the information about the resources is not where you're going,
Yeah.
you want to know about them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love hearing where that idea went in terms of meeting people truly where they were. I mean, to take things up. And we've seen that in hubs too, where hubs have launched parenting programs in the local bar for trivia night to come and ask child development questions and afterwards say, oh, did you like this? By the way, I'm your parenting educator over here. You want to sign up for a class with me? And half the families in the bar signed up. And so thinking about how do we meet people where they are? There's so much knowledge that is here in this school, in this college, that we have an opportunity to get out with innovative and new partnerships that we actually have models for. So OPEC isn't the only project across this college that has real and tangible effects that are impacting families' lives every day. But there are some opportunities that I can see for that to happen. And even thinking about this, how many of you know that broccoli is good for you? Okay. How many of you eat broccoli every day? Oh, no. Okay. Oh, so no hands. So there's also a difference between how do we just get information out and how do we get it out in meaningful, useful ways that people can use every single day, that changes norms, that changes lives, that brings community together and meets people where they are, just like you said. And in my final thought, just an invitation to collaborate. This year, as a leadership team at the Hallie Ford Center, we've been talking about what the strengths are at the center, associated with the center, around experience and projects, translating research into practical ideas. And so over the next couple of months, I believe we'll be sending out invitations to gather, to have these conversations and think about what's the research happening across the college, where collaboration together, looking at what's working and what's being done, can actually help bring more research out. And through OPAC, we've had many collaborators across the college, some are whom are in the room, folks who have come and given talks. We've had students come and present work through posters, as well as launch collaborations. There are so many opportunities with OPEC as well as other projects. We'd love to be a part of supporting them. So you're welcome to learn more and get connected with OPEC. We have lots of resources. The parent professional development that we have open and freely available, students can join, faculty can join. You're welcome to share that out with partners. And I will just end with a final note, again, of gratitude. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share, and I'm happy to stay around and answer questions. I think we're out of time for the official. So, thank you.